Okay, it is public now, and it should be showing up. Okay,
Ah,
so
there it is.
yeah,
I don't
it takes
see any. I don't see my face or anything. Am I
it takes a
supposed to?
minute. It's about 7 second to 8 second delay,
Oh, I see. I gotcha.
and then it shows up.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
Wow, how cool.
yeah, it's beautiful when everything works.
Yeah.
Um, so this is what I was about to ask you, because you have been such an iconic drummer for 50 years. Everybody knows you from Tower. Everybody knows you from your the incredible grooves that you created for Tower of Power. And I watched the Tower interview with you, and you get so many questions. This was my thought. What is there anything that anybody has not ever asked you that you would like them to know about your playing and your career? Is there anything that nobody's ever touched on that you can think of?
I don't know. I mean, it's an ongoing process. I mean, I'm still involved in it. Still writing the story.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's just this fluid thing. So it's just I'm always working on things. I'm always building, my ability to interact with the music I like, and you know, so it's still going.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the things when when I talked to you a little bit at length about how you were able to come up with those grooves and what you attributed the grooves that you made for Soul Vaccination and Squib Cakes and all those, and how you developed your style. And I remember you saying that you had a lot of things going on, but what really helped you come up with those grooves and that way to play with Tower was because of how Rocco played. And,
Well, yes and no.
mm-hmm,
Yes and no. Rocco. Of course, Rocco just had a unique, cool, vibe in his playing. I mean, to me, he was like the way that the band sounded when I first heard them. The band sounded unique because of him. He had this really cool kind of sound, and the way that he kind of like approached rhythm and everything. He kind of thumped his way through everything. But we just had a really great chemistry. We sort of we never really spoke about what we did together. We just played together.
mm,
And the times that we did speak about things were probably where they were the least productive, because our relationship really musically was just playing together, just doing it.
mm,
And so I've always had lots of ideas, and if anything, creativity is probably my strongest asset, as an artist, is that flow of creativity. And so Rocco also being very creative, and it just kind of we just do our stuff together.
mm. Um, when I talk with other people and we talk about Tower of Power and how you played and the whole sound and groove of that band, there really is no other band or rhythm section that anyone can think of that has that feel and sound. It's incredibly hard to emulate. And I talked with Ronnie Beck a couple of weeks ago, and he said that trying to emulate you was really he could play the same notes, but it would never be you, right?
Well, I could say that about him as well. I mean, I could
Mm,
never play like him, and
mm,
I've been familiar with his playing for God almost since I started Tower.
mm,
And so um, I don't think the idea with music is to play like someone else.
right.
I don't think that's music is not like that for me, you know. And for kind of all of my, really close musical friends, it's never about playing like someone else. It's always about being yourself. And so, if anything, that's what stands out to people, I think, about what we do is that we're just being ourselves. I mean, I was thinking about this today because I have to do a clinic presentation for somebody. And so I was thinking about two things. I was thinking about creativity and process and how important those two things are if you're going to build your playing. So the creative part is finding out what you want to do. What Where do you want to go with your playing? What do you want to create? And then the process part of it is putting in the reps and doing it.
Mm.
And so there's no secret. There's no secret to what we do. It's basically just busting your ass. It's just hard work and putting the reps in. I recently saw a quote because I was at people say, "Oh, you guys are genius," and they've attributed genius to what we do and all this other thing. And people use that word genius with to a lot of people who have developed their lives to their art or whatever they do, their skill to a really high degree.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote is that genius is persistence in disguise. And that's absolutely the truth. And somebody who has like really worked hard to develop something, they're going to be miles ahead of everyone else because they're willing to work.
Mm.
So, another cool quote I like is that if you will do what others won't, then you'll be able to do what others can't. And that really sums up the whole work for success kind of process, the reaching a goal. You never keep your eyes on the goal, you keep your eyes on the process, and then it takes you down that path, that journey to what you want.
From that perspective, when you first started playing drums, what drew you and what was the passion behind that to get that and creating what you were playing?
When I heard Greg Rico with Sly and the Family Stone, Sonny Payne with Count Basie, Jake Hanna with Woody Herman Orchestra, the drummers of James Brown, Jabbo and Clyde and those guys, and Zig with the Meters. I saw these guys. Tony Williams, Elvin Jones are two like big examples to me. When I saw these guys, and what stood out to me was that they were all unique. That they had a very personalized, kind of a unique voice, and that you knew it was them by listening by the recordings. You knew it was them. There was no guesswork. They had such a strong voice and such a personality in their playing. And that was the thing that stood out to me. That's what I wanted. I didn't want their licks per se, although I was learning a lot of that stuff, to develop vocabulary and things. But what I wanted was personalization in what I did, just like them.
Mm.
So that's the thing that kind of has driven me and motivated me then, inspired me, is that I wanted to have a voice like my heroes.
Then what was the first night you met Emilio and the band, and what was that like the first night you sat down and played with Rocco, and how did that fit into your process?
It was just, I knew it was going to happen. I mean, when I first saw them play, when I first went to see them, it was at Keystone Corner in San Francisco. And, Skip Mesquite and Mick Gillette, now passed away, great guys. And they're the ones that got me in the band. They invited me to come, to check out the band. Because they had come to a club I was playing in Oakland and invited me, said, we're looking for a drummer. We're going to make a drummer change. You want to come and check it out? And so I went and listened to them. And, I fell in love with it immediately. It was exactly the music that I kind of liked, not kind of like it, the music I loved. And had horns, and they were doing original music and obscure cover songs, and doing all this arranging, doing it their own way. And it just had so much personality and cool vibe. I fell in love with it then. Love at first sight. I knew I was going to be in it before they knew I was going to be in it. I hadn't even met them yet, and I knew I was going to do it.
So it was just a feeling that you had. You just knew it was going to happen.
More than that, it was just a knowing. I knew it. I was going to be in it.
Wow. And then they invited you to hear them. And did you sat?
Yeah, well, then we went to a rehearsal, and then, Mimi, went to a rehearsal, and I met all the guys and all that, and it was tough for Mimi because he's getting rid of his brother,
Oh.
Jack was the original drummer. And so, that's tough stuff. They family, and then they started playing music together, and, it was a difficult thing that he had to do,
Mm-hmm. And then when you played the rehearsal that first night, did it feel like you thought it was going to feel?
Of course.
It's kind of a dumb question, huh?
It was when you have all this, kind of the music that I had in my head, and the, all the rhythm and all the things that, the thing that I was learning to do, they were doing it. It was like it was just like a perfect match, and I didn't have any restrictions on, what I was doing, what I had to play. I didn't have anybody looking over my shoulder, never. I mean, it was always encouragement, go, do it, do this, do that. And Emilio loves drums. And so, I was able to, we were kindred spirits, I was able to do anything he asked, and more.
So how much input did you have then when you were doing Soul Vaccination and Get Your Feet Back on the Ground and all those kinds of tunes? How much was it a group creative process, or how much involved were you in creating all those grooves with Rocco and the band?
Well, I mean,
yeah.
The answer is yes. All of the above. I mean, all of our music, is a collective effort. We have people bring songs in, they have song ideas. We shape those ideas, with our personality, the way that we play. We interpret the songs. Sometimes we're given an idea. Try this. Here's how I want it to be. Here's what I'm thinking, right? And then you shape it based on instructions you get or inspiration that you have. And so, a lot of the songs that have the more complex drum stuff, those were like drum ideas kind of first. And then we just built stuff around them, or I get an idea for something. I hear drum and bass together, or I'd hear a rhythm figure or something, somebody would, right? And it would just go from there, always a collective effort.
And the other thing that when I listen back to those records, is how good the drum sounds were in the recording, and the kick drum, especially. I really like how the kick drum and snare sound. Did you have much part in a role in the recording sounds of?
I didn't know a damn thing. I'm not kidding, man. I didn't know anything, nothing. That's why, we're so blessed to have, Jim Gaines, who recorded a bunch of that early stuff, we're so blessed to have somebody like him, because he really knew what he was doing. And so we did a lot of recording with him, and, he just knew what to do. So it made everything sound great. And so I didn't know anything. None of us did. We were new to the whole thing. It used to take us a long time to, get tracks and all this stuff because we just didn't understand yet. We didn't have the accuracy in the studio yet. We didn't have that because that's a whole different animal than playing live. Recording is much different, than a live performance.
And how different do you play recording than you do live? I mean, in getting the right balance between the sounds and the kit.
Well, the drummer has to be his own recording engineer. The drummer has to, have all of those relationships between the voices, have to have those be right. I mean, if those relationships aren't right, there's no recording engineer that's going to do that for you. The drummer has to understand those relationships himself, and so that's the first thing, And then once you got that, then it's good. But then recording requires a different kind of mindset in that oftentimes when you're recording something, it's the beginning of the evolution of a song. For us, it is. I mean, the way that songs are, we do on the recordings very often changes as we perform, and the pieces become performance pieces.
When all of that was happening, and this is the part that I think is fascinating to a lot of people, the music in the Bay Area during the time when Tower was first forming was an incredible hotspot and mecca of music. What was it like for you and the band playing with all of the other bands and music that was going on in the Bay Area? There was Cold Blood and Sons of Champlin and Sly and the Family Stone, all those bands that were around.
Well, those are only, you only mentioned three. There was bands of every size and description, musical description, every kind of genre. It was amazing. It was a fabulous time with great players everywhere, in all sorts of different styles. There was, of course, the horn bands, of course, but then there was like all the rock and roll stuff. There was, of course, Santana. There was Latin music. There was all kinds of world music. There was great classical music. There was a great jazz scene. So all of these, a great blues scene, a really developed blues scene. So there, all the music that was going on, it was just everywhere. You heard all of this stuff, and it just influenced the way that you made your music. It was like it became fusion before it was fusion. If you dig what I'm saying, because everybody was mixing things up. So for the last 3 months, since all of this stay-at-home stuff began, 3 days a week, I meet with Michael Shreve, Greg Rico, Lenny White, and Mike Clark. And we met in 1970, all of us, in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area.
Yeah, 70, 71. That's when we all met. And we became fast friends during that period of time and have remained friends all throughout the years, and then decided to reconnect and possibly, do a little podcast or some kind of thing. And so we're having so much fun doing it. We just do it now for therapy. But, we talk about what we learned in our time away from each other and what we learned here in the Bay Area, when we were starting. And it was really incredible. Like Mike Clark and Paul Jackson, I met those guys right after I got out of the military. Mike was one of the very first guys I met after I got out of the service. And we were both subbing in a band at the On Broadway in Oakland, downtown Oakland, where Tower used to play. And that's where I met the Tower guys. And I just happened to be subbing that one night, and the Tower guys, they were coming in to play. When the times that I'd been in there, I'd seen them, they'd come in and sit in. And then the one night they asked me to play. So all of us, all these drummers, we all met in the Bay Area, used to go to each other's gigs, used to hang out, and it was just a fertile, unbelievable creative time just in music in general, because you had the Fillmore and all these other great venues. And then Bill Graham, who was Tower's first manager, he was educating young people, because he would have all of these really diverse musical styles all on one show, Fillmore West and, all the different venues that he had, Winterland and everywhere else. And it was educating the ears of the public. It was really amazing.
And at that time, from what you've said and others, there were so many places to play where you could, if you weren't working one night, you could go hear another band playing almost anywhere in the Bay Area. And now it's kind of sad that with the pandemic, but even if the pandemic wasn't happening, those kinds of venues really aren't around anymore for people to play and go hear each other.
It's a different time.
Yeah.
It's a way different time. There's kind of the era, those guys that I mentioned, kind of Tower, all of us, we came up with the tradition of being in a band,
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a freelance thing. It wasn't YouTube. There wasn't really places to perform other than with a band in a music venue. You didn't sit down in a room and put a camera on yourself and broadcast, it was
right.
Unheard of, So we came from the tradition of bands.
And all the guys that you mentioned are all guys that I grew up loving how they played and wanting to hear them. And what I'm thinking of as a drummer, the one thing that I always wanted to be able to do is go sit next to the guy and watch him play and feel how he plays and hear how it sounds. And you can't get that through a camera.
Correct.
Because when you go and you listen to the band, and if you were able to check out all those guys, I'm thinking it's a bigger influence than just watching somebody on YouTube.
Well, of course. I mean, we used to hang out. We go to each other's gigs. We sometimes would play gigs together in our bands, And so, of course, Greg with Sly, Santana, Michael Shreve and Santana, Mike Clark and Paul with Herbie Hancock, Lenny White with Azteca, and Joe Henderson, and all the stuff that do you realize that Lenny White, he was on Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, that real historic Miles Davis recording. That was done 24 hours after Woodstock.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 24 hours after Woodstock, Bitches Brew was recorded.
Man.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just, but so the point is here, we would go to each other's gigs, we would hang out, we would talk, we would enjoy each other, but we never copied each other. Yeah. Because the whole vibe was you developing your own voice. You didn't want to sound like somebody else. And that they all are that way. You look at all those guys, each guy super unique. Look at all their recorded works. You hear really unique playing for that reason.
And as I think about all of their playing too, everybody's feel is different. Everybody's how they approach everything sounds completely different. Yeah.
Music is playing an instrument is like handwriting. And so if you think about handwriting, you learn all of the mechanics of handwriting. Everybody does. And then you write. You write like you write. You don't write like someone else writes. And so you can develop your handwriting, you can practice it and make it artistic, you can make it anything you want it to be, or you can neglect it and have crappy handwriting for your whole life. There's people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so music is exactly the same way. How you learn how to play, look at that as learning how to write. And so you can turn that into something really, really artistic. You can have it be just something that you do because it's necessary. Or you could have it be something that has importance to you and you develop it and turn it into, something that's really, really an expression of you. You use it as a tool to express yourself.
There, you mentioned a minute ago. You were saying there of a fusion, and the music in those days, in the early or late '60s and early '70s, it was a real creative time, and all the music was allowed to breathe and stretch out. And there were solo sections, and a lot of the music seemed to be a mixture of a lot of things, sort of fusiony. One thing that I want to talk to you a little bit about is after you left Tower and you moved to Los Angeles, and I heard you in an interview once say that you really like to play grooves and you don't really like to do solos and you don't like to do lots of chops per se. You really enjoy playing the grooves and making the band feel. But when you were in LA for a period of time, you were working with some bands and playing some stuff that was really kind of fusiony. Um, what sort of stuff do you remember doing when you were in Los Angeles that was more of the fusion stuff?
Well, my time in LA was, you know, I guess I couldn't be in Tower because Tower was a bunch of dope heads and, drug addicts, alcoholics and stuff. And it wasn't fun to be around that.
Mm.
So, I just moved on, and so I went to Los Angeles, thought I'd try music there. But, I was like a man without a country. I didn't really care for it. I was there. It wasn't a fulfilling music life for me. I wasn't really interested in being a studio musician. I love it. I respect it. I think it's really cool. But that wasn't me, And I tried all of that stuff. I did a bunch of recording, and there was really not any bands to be in. It wasn't a place where there were bands. It was a freelance kind of a deal. So there was a band that I was in for a while there called Wishful Thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a bunch of recordings and gigs and that kind of stuff. But it was really, at the time, it was a novelty in a way because it was the only band around. There were no bands.
Mm.
And we actually had a band with the same players. We never had subs. And, that was not kind of how things operated in LA because all the parts in LA were interchangeable at any time. So you had to be able to read. You had to be a good reader. You had to, show up to a gig and be able to read the music and sound like you rehearsed it for 10 years, which I could do. I could do that. By the time I left LA, I could do that. I could make it any music I was reading sound like I rehearsed it.
Mm.
And that's a skill you develop there because that's what you need in the studios.
And the thing that I remember about Wishful Thinking because it was sort of the music that was happening in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, that fusion stuff is you were playing with a lot more chops and a lot of feels and a lot of that the sounds that were coming out of Los Angeles at the time, which I never really got to hear you play much in Tower because Tower is more groove. Am I?
Tower's the same thing. Exactly. I approach it exactly the same way.
Mm.
I'm serious. I approach Tower exactly the same way.
Okay.
I let the music dictate to me what it needs. And so the Wishful Thinking was a different kind of music, but I approached getting to it the same way. So you play things, oh, that works there. Oh no, that doesn't work there. It's it's the same way that I approach playing with Tower.
Mm.
Really.
Yeah. the music was more, they're odd meters, and it wasn't a vocal
Yeah.
drip thing. It was
Yeah, there
just,
was that.
yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be difficult or anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that, I approach the music in the same way. And so the that particular music required that I did different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like Tower. It's the very same thing. Tower music, when we learn new music, says to me, do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not kidding. Do this or don't do this.
Right, right. And I'm jumping around a little bit here, but one thing that I noticed about the band and with you guys, that there is such a chemistry about the band, and such a, it feels like a family. Like you guys
Yeah.
really love and care about each other. And so from when you return to Tower of Power, from that moment till now, it really seems like you've really become a family and a working unit. And the last number of times I've heard you guys in the last few years, uh, it could not be better or firing on all cylinders in a way that it seems like you guys just intuitively know what you're going to do, and you just lock in and you play, and it's such a, I don't know if I'm describing it accurately, but it just, you guys just feel like a family and act and
Yeah.
interact like a family.
Well, it was, we're still like a family, and we have all the little inner family dust ups and all that stuff. But we're not struggling with habits or anything that would really slow us down. Basically, it's just we don't have any addiction problems, which is really big for people.
Hmm.
And really big, especially with bands. I mean, it was Tower's downfall, really. For years was that. And so when that was removed, then really the pureness of what Tower is kind of comes out. And so in the last few years, we really have worked hard to keep the people in it that are in it, because they're such great people, for one, and we enjoy each other so much. And aside from the music part, just everybody's such cool people, really, really great people. And the music is so fun to play, and it's kind of like, um, you want to play it as good as you can every time you play it. And with that sort of mindset, things continue, like to elevate. That saying, your attitude determines your altitude. Well, that's really, really true. So we have a really good chemistry within us, which I think makes the music go to a level that other bands maybe, or other situations, can't get to, because they don't have personalities that mesh together really, really well. And if they're not meshing together really well, then you bring that on the stage with you.
Mm.
I think when we play, people sense that we enjoy each other. Because it's really, really true. Just like, well, you worked with us, so you know
Right.
what everybody is. You know,
Absolutely.
and it's a cool bunch of people. Who
Yeah,
have high standards in their work. You know.
absolutely. And the other thing that I noticed is, I'm a fan of the music, but even all of you in the band are a fan of the music. And
That's true.
you know,
Well, music, let's just say we're music fans, because we listen to a lot of different kinds of music, not just the music that we play, but we listen to such a wide range of styles. Everyone has really interest, a lot of jazz heads in the band, and they love big band and they love jazz and improvisational music, but also really enjoy good classical music, enjoy Latin music, enjoy good songwriting, you know. So Doc and Mimi, those guys are like songwriters, so they understand, and they're like they're as into songs as maybe someone else would be into jazz, and they understand songwriting and songwriters, and they have favorite songwriters and all that sort of stuff. And so they have that's their contribution to what we do. So we have all this thing going on that makes Tower music.
Mm.
It's pretty cool.
It is, and it feels, it's a feeling that's palpable when you go and you perform, and the fans that show up, that are there, and the band, and when I was there, it's just something that you have to be there to feel it, because it is really strong. I mean, the music itself just kind of picks everybody up. And what I was experiencing when you guys would play is you would get the same feeling as you were playing. It's like, okay, there was never this thought of like, oh, we got to play this song again. It's like, oh, we get to play this song again, which is completely different.
Yeah.
And uh, and there is really no band that's touring and playing like this anymore, as far as I can tell. Maybe a few rock bands, but
Yeah.
no.
Well, I don't know, man. It's harder these days because there's so much freelance work, and the musical landscape is different. There's really not bands to be in.
Mm,
And so that we've been able to continue to do what we do is really been a blessing. But it also speaks a lot to the way that our mindset is, the way that our band is constructed, the way that we operate. We are always thinking together all the time, and we never have a conversation. Well, you were around us, we never have conversations about you did this wrong. Never. We
I,
never have, I don't like this about you. You never hear people say that about anything. I don't like you, or I don't like this. I mean, it's always about just, I don't know how to describe it, but it's about having fun and doing something together. We laugh. You were with us, man.
oh,
We
yeah,
laugh. We screw around all the time. We have a lot of fun. But the star of the show is the music.
absolutely.
That's the way we do it.
And you said something once where somebody had asked, you tour or you do this, and you're on the road, and you just said, well, this is what we do. This is our deal.
Yeah.
and it is true. And the time I was there it was so enjoyable with all of the guys. I mean, it really was. And you were right. There's always only positive comments made.
Pretty
There's never,
much.
yeah, there's never, getting down on somebody or anything.
Yeah.
It's
We
all.
are like a self-policing unit. So if somebody like addiction problems and all that stuff, we have a very low tolerance for that because it was so destructive and it ruined the band, really, and relationships for years. So we just keep an eye on each other, on what we have. And I think it's really, really important for us to do that so that we can preserve it. We want to preserve it as long as we can. It's not going to be here forever.
Right.
But if we care for it and care for ourselves, then we can keep things going for a lot longer.
Well, one thing that I don't think many people ever really talk about in music is how important it is to be really close with people when
Yeah.
you're playing, and because music is, you're communicating with each other
Yes,
musically.
sir. Yes, sir.
And if you're really good friends and close with people, the music is going to only excel and sound better.
That's right. So if you just think about what is the key component to a conversation.
Hmm.
It's listening to each other.
Hmm.
So in order for you to have a real dialogue, you have to listen to each other. I remember I did a gig once with Randy Brecker and Dave Samuels and all these really heavyweight guys, and we were doing a clinic for Yamaha in Santa Barbara. And it was for the Santa Barbara Public Schools. And all the kids got to play with us, and we did a concert that night and all this stuff. And so at the end of the afternoon, the kids were asking questions. And so one kid stood up and he asked, Randy Brecker, he says, if there was one thing about this experience that you would like us to remember, if there was like you could say it in one word, what would it be? And he thought kind of for a second, and he says, well, listen. And so what he was meaning was listen to each other. And really, the more you listen to each other, the more you have that developed skill, the easier it is to communicate with everybody. You have to listen. You have to listen to each other. Isn't that something that society desperately needs right now, is the ability for everyone to listen to each other? If you were to just listen to everyone around you without any sort of judgment, you just listen, you really understand a lot about people.
Yeah, I want to say that since I've been doing this and doing interviews, and thank you for coming on and talking with me, is I have had to really learn how to listen, to ask a question and then listen and let the person talk.
Sure.
And I agree with you. I think we don't listen enough in all aspects of our lives sometimes. For your music, I was talking to Roger Smith about this, when you guys play the parts, when you listen individually, there's so much going on. It's really, the rhythms are fairly complex. And if you weren't listening and hearing where everybody else was, it could so easily kind of get on top of each other. But you guys don't do that. When you and Jerry and Roger and Mark are playing, and then the horns come in, there's all sorts of things going on, but it all fits, and it's never in anybody else's way. And that only comes from listening, I think.
Well, it's just like we create like kind of like a rhythmic sort of fabric, kind of, and you kind of like, as opposed to this, you kind of join the pieces of the fabric together. You kind of focus on where to be at your spot in the music. Dave Sanborn said, man, you guys are like popcorn, the things going up and down and all this other stuff,
Yeah. So somebody asked a question here, and I'm just going to ask this. There's a Yamaha video out with you playing a wicked cool cowbell groove on Soul with a capital S.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know how totally wicked and cool that is.
Oh, thank you.
Are you guys still play that tune once in a while, right?
Well, that's kind of like one of the opening songs of the show, usually.
Yeah.
So we have we got really adventurous, a few months ago, and we decided that we were going to do 4 different sets. And so we put together 4 different sets. We actually only ended up doing 3 of those because it was a lot of music, And so we have basically 3 different shows, and Soul with a capital S was kind of in the beginning of one of those sets. We have all these segues and all these different things that we do to connect songs together. And so the Soul with a capital S with the bell, the cowbell, I was always kind of dug Latin music, and I always had it in kind of my setup, and I would use it for different things, and then one day at sound check, I just started using that instead of the way that I had been playing it. And Mimi turns around and goes, that's cool, why don't you do that all the time? So
I want to interject. You did that a lot, where you would go instead of on the hat, you would go to the cowbell in the middle of some things, which was way cool.
Well, it just kind of adds another sort of vibe to it, another texture. I mean, you can, just by changing a voice that you hit, you can change the whole flavor of everything. You haven't really changed a beat, but you just change a voice, that you're playing, and it changes everything.
Yeah. Uh, the other thing that I wanted to say when you were talking about songs, I think I was there when you decided to do the 4 different sets and try to come up with a way to do
Yeah,
it.
it was
And
a failed experiment.
it, but but this is what was interesting is from a fan's perspective, it doesn't matter what song you would choose to be the encore song, it would fit. It would be an encore song. It really didn't matter because all of the fans so know all of the music. You could almost pick any song as
Yeah,
the encore and people would be happy.
yeah. I think that kind of coming to see our shows is an experience for people. It's because it's just a cool. I think it's a cool thing. They have a lot of people. We know a lot of the people that come. Not everybody, of course, but there are stalwart TOP fans. We go to certain communities, and they're always there. They're always coming to hang out and say hello, and they invite us to eat. And
Mm.
so these are like relationships, that we've had, really great relationships with people beyond, you know, the stage. It's so cool, all the time, and I hear from these people all the time, and they're my friends, and now that we've relationships that we've established over the years with TOP. So I mean, you can't replace that. It's just such a cool thing.
It is, and I don't think I've ever been around a band or music that have that kind of relationship with their fans.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever experienced it. And from doing sound in LA, I've never been on a big, Beyonce tour, or anything like that. But music in general don't have that kind of relationship with their fans the way you guys do. Where when I had Tommy on the first night, the people that called in from around the country, hey Tommy, and he knew them all. And he goes,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll play golf the next time, and you know
Yeah.
that, and you guys are when you go to those communities like that small venue in Rhode Island that we did, that little like 400 people, and each one of them knew all you guys, and you knew almost all of them by name.
Well, I don't know if we knew all of them by name, but a lot of them,
Right.
for sure. I mean, it's just, it's a cool experience, that just goes beyond the music. It makes the whole experience, even more rich. The now that we're home and all this stuff. I mean, the whole tower experience. It's not a 9 to 5 sort of a gig. I mean, there's a lot of things involved in it. The relationship with people, of course, the music, people's relationship with the music, the people's connection with the players. um, it's a whole thing, that doesn't get to happen right now. So it's a big empty spot, I think, for
Mm.
lots of people, including us.
what what is the plan? We've got a few minutes before we need to go. uh what is the plan right now, moving forward? I know that the video just came out or is about to come out. The
It's about to come out. It will be this, I think, late summer, maybe early fall. That
Mhm.
it'll come out. And so, oh, there's my son. He, my son just walked in the garage. I was just saying hello.
Oh,
So,
we,
the video's coming out, and
mhm.
so now I lost
Oh,
my son came and waved at me. Say it again. What were we talking about?
yeah. So what is in the
Oh,
works
the
for
plan.
you guys?
Okay,
Yeah, what's
the
the
plan.
plan?
Yeah, we talked about. We have new management.
Hmm.
Ivory Daniel, he's our manager now. Great guy. Um, he mentioned something about possibly October,
Mm.
but in a few minutes, actually in 20 minutes, we have a tower meeting, a Zoom meeting. So we're going to find out, like some more about, what the plan is.
Yeah.
But he said maybe October. But all of our shows this year, kind of have been postponed, or moved into next year. You know, so we really don't know. We're still in this holding pattern.
Mm. You think there will be? Are you guys maybe writing some more songs or trying to come up with something new while you're not able to get out?
Well, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, um, I don't, honestly, I don't know what some of the other guys are doing. I know what I'm doing here. I've
Yeah.
got students, and that's a growing thing now. My teaching practice, and then I got a book project I'm working on. I have some master classes that I've done and I'm doing.
Hmm.
Uh, so it seems to be just plus practicing every day. There just seems there's a lot to do all the time. So, and it's really good because I know that when we start up again, that I'll be somewhat prepared.
Yeah. I've mentioned this a few times. I took a lesson from you way, way, way back at Gelb Music in Scott Morris
Yeah.
studio.
Oh, at Redwood City. Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing that I took away was how much volume you got out of an instrument just from one simple, like your hand didn't move, but the stick was, it could just get so much volume out of the instrument, like the snare. And I just sat there in amazement thinking, how the heck does he do that? I mean, you know, it's a combination of things you were showing me with your fingers and everything. So, do students ask you that sort of stuff a lot when you're, if
Yeah.
especially if it's a new student?
Yeah. It's the same principle as if you want to raise your voice, what do? You raise your voice.
Mm,
It's you decide and then you do it. And
mm,
so playing the drums, volume, it's the very same deal. It's a conscious decision. You can play soft, you can play loud, you can play, there's all the dynamic range of things that you can do. And, you know, I always tell the students, basically, tell myself that you can't give yourself you can't say a word you don't know. You can't give yourself an instruction that you're not prepared to give. Some people do it, but, if your hands aren't operating in the way that you'd like them to, maybe it's because you're not giving them the proper instructions, or you're giving them incorrect instructions. This is the control center for everything, right?
mhm.
All emotion, everything that you do starts with a thought. So if you want to play loud, what do? Okay, I'm going to play loud now. Bang. Okay, I'm going to play soft. Tap. That's
Yeah.
really the idea. And so I was always taught to about economy of movement. And so in a maximum amount of volume in a small space. That's the way that I was taught. And all the teachers that I had operated on that principle. And to me, it helps you to play in a relaxed way and have a pretty broad dynamic range, in the process.
Anybody that's ever watched you play, and I was able to sit next close to you and watch you
You
play,
mixed us.
right? Yeah. And the coolest time was that place in Rhode Island because I almost was sitting next to you with the mixing desk, and you don't ever look like you're working. It's your hands from a distance look like you look like you're barely moving. So that sort of describes what you were just explaining.
Well, you're keeping the bus on the road.
Yeah. Well, last thing, because I know you got to go and you got to do your tower Zoom, but I want to say there over the since the accident,
Yes, sir.
there's been so many people, saying things, and I'm not making this up. Someone even said to me when I was talking to them, they didn't know that I knew you guys, said, well, didn't some of those tower guys die? And I'm like, no, no, nobody died. But knowing that the train accident with you and Mark, I can't, you look so incredibly healthy, and you
Mm.
look like you've been working out and lifting weights and stuff, right? What's your exercise routine right now?
Well, right now, I mean, it's not as good as it was before this pandemic thing,
Mhm.
happened. But I exercise most days of the week. I cycle a lot. I like cycling, and so, 15, 20 miles, 25-mile rides, I do that, like yoga. I like push-ups, any kind of physical fitness, I walk a lot,
Mhm.
I laugh a lot. My family, my wife and son, they're pretty crazy. My Italian wife, has a great sense of humor, and she's really crazy. And so, keeps things really interesting around here. It's really fun. And I have a lot of great friends, So life is good, man. I just keep a positive outlook on things. I have a optimistic outlook on life in general, and I think that in itself is, is brings a lot of health and vitality to your life.
Mm. Well, I think I have to agree with you that one thing that has helped me these past few months is I have a 14-year-old daughter that's here with me. And if I didn't have my kids and my family and friends, it, that the importance of that has helped me get through all of these times. And I think
Of
a lot
course,
of people are experiencing that.
of
And
course.
being happy really helps with the health.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, what the Bible talks about, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine.
Yeah.
And it's really true, and I've had people everywhere come up to me and say, man, we've been praying for you, and we're so happy to see you, blah blah blah, and people you don't even know, they're praying for you. They're praying that you're going to be okay. To me, that really is such a blessing, man. And I have no doubt that that's why I'm here talking to you today, because a bunch of people prayed for me.
I would be in agreement with that because we,
Mark too, Mark, people
yeah,
prayed for both of us,
yeah.
and it was kind of touch and go with Mark too, for a
Hmm.
while.
And prayer works.
Yes,
Just
sir.
and then the last thing before we go, I have Dale Hur on this afternoon,
Dale Hur, yes.
and he says that the two of you, he met you in Los Angeles,
That's
and
correct. I did a recording session for him.
yeah, and that he went to a Bible class with you and
Yeah.
a couple of times, and so he's going to be on this afternoon, and he wanted me to tell you hi.
I give him my regards,
Yeah,
Yeah, I did a recording session for him for the United States Football League.
yeah,
The
yeah.
theme for the USFL. That's what it was.
Yeah, he that's what he was saying, that most of the stuff that he's done is writing music and jingles and stuff.
Yeah.
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 Well, David, thank you so much. I
A
can't
pleasure, brother.
I
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me. This is so cool, man.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it very much.
All right. I'm going to play us out with Soul Vaccination, and have a good talk with the fellas. Tell them
With the
hi.
fellas. All right, brother.
Thanks, David.
See you, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Soul vaccination all across the nation. Keep you from catching